Managing multiple clients or large websites? Automate your SEO with Ali AI. Start your free trial now.
Taylor Swift is a link builder. There were rumors that she would get engaged. Our client said, let's give them a free wedding venue. And then we got them 50 links. That's digital PR.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
So thank you all for having me here. Really excited, and well done for making it to very nearly the end of Brighton SEO. So as a little girl, I loved to write. I'd write stories, poems, murder mysteries, books, you name it, I wrote it. And then when I grew up, I fell in love with psychology. So I went to university, I got a first class honours degree in psychology, and nerd alert, I was the highest achieving student for consumer psychology. And then that was kind of the catalyst for my marketing career, which was about 10 plus years ago. I have kind of lost count. And back then, my copywriting process looked a little bit like this. So I would basically open a website, have a sip of coffee, and then just write. As you can probably imagine, it wasn't exactly the best approach. There wasn't really any data going on. There was no research. There was no idea of what conversion even was. So the results were all right. I did okay. I managed to pull it out of the bag just about, but it wasn't amazing. There was nothing groundbreaking happening. And then I had an idea. I thought, what if there was a way that I could combine my love of psychology with my love of writing? What would that look like? And I realized data. Data is the way that I can bring both of those together. I imagine there's a lot of data nerds in the house here. I'm probably the least data-y of all of you. So we are gonna collect some data, but as I said, I'm a word girl. I like words. I'm not really big on numbers, so it's gonna be very qualitative data. Essentially, when I'm looking at data, I'm looking at the data of people, the data of psychology. So I collect 3 types of data. The first is brand data. So at this stage, I just really want to understand as much as possible about the brand itself. So I will collect intake questionnaires and quizzes, interviews, and metrics. So the intake questionnaire is essentially where I just bombard the main stakeholder with as many questions as possible. I want to learn everything about their brand, everything about their product, everything about their goals, their culture, and just really, really get it from their perspective. I'll then build on this with the interviews, which is where I will put their key internal stakeholders in the hot seat and understand about the business from each of their perspectives, because they have different ways of seeing the business and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. So you can get a lot of insights from speaking to different people within the company. And then finally, I will collect all the other metrics that I can possibly get from them. So this will be things like going into GA4 and getting what metrics in terms of what's working, looking at heat maps to see where people are, or even things like their award entries and seeing what data they're putting in front of people when they're showcasing the wins of their company. But there's a problem when we only ever speak to brands, and that is that we miss the customer story. So anybody here familiar with Stanley and their Stanley Cups? We get a show of hands if anyone knows what they are. Okay, nice. So Stanley used to position themselves as a company that was like a rugged outdoor pursuits and drinkware for people who are going camping, hiking, fishing, hunting. And this is what they thought their product did. They thought their product was for this particular audience group. But recently we've discovered that's not exactly true. So a bunch of Utah mums, I feel like that was the start of it, Utah mums on TikTok, realised Stanley Cups were perfect for going about everyday life. If it was going to yoga, going grocery shopping, whatever it was, Stanley Cups were the way to go. But if you went to their website, it told a completely different story because the brand has existed in this silo. So what Stanley have done, if you go to their website today, it looks really different to how it used to look about 5 years ago. And this is because they now know what the customer expects of their product and how the customer uses it. Which brings us really nicely onto the next piece of data I collect, which is audience data. So this is the main point that I focus on when I'm doing any data collection. I want to know all about the customer. I want to know what the audience are doing. And at the same time, when I'm doing this, I'm not technically looking at the logics behind it. I am interested in the customer journey and the exact steps they take, but I'm more interested in why they are doing it. So I care more about the emotions, and there are tons of studies out there that will show you that if you want to get someone to buy from you, you've got to lean into their emotions. It's their emotions that's going to sell more than the logics behind it. So when I'm speaking to people, I will look at surveys, interviews, and data mining for them. So my audience data typically starts with large-scale voice of customer data. So this is where surveys come in really handy. Whether you've got an audience group of 50 people or you have 50,000 people, if you can get a survey out to your users, you're going to learn so much more about your products and your services. So you can fire this out on an email, just get in touch with those people. And during these surveys, I will ask them everything about their customer journey. So I want to know about what was going on before they even got introduced with your products, what were they using before, what convinced them to come over to your side, and then what was that experience like afterwards. So as a writer and a marketer, I get a lot of insights from this, but for the stakeholders, surveys are really nice because it also gives the product team information, because you can give people that space to say, actually, here's what I don't like about your product, here's what's really frustrating, and here's what's not working. So it benefits more people in the company than just the marketers. And then once you've got those surveys, you can build on these with one-to-one interviews with some of those key audience members who are the perfect representation of your ideal target customer. And these are brilliant because it gives those customers that chance to just take to the floor and share their experience. People love just telling you what they think. They love having the opportunity to talk about their experience and what's gone on for them. And for me, coming in as a third party, it gives them that chance to really talk candidly because they're not having to tell the marketing manager or someone in that company. They're just talking to me, and I don't really care if they say something bad about them. They can do that. It's a safe space. But I get really good insights, and I get it in their tone of voice. I get to hear the actual words that they're using. But obviously, not everybody you work with is going to have receptive customers who are willing to talk to you or who are going to fill out surveys. So in this case, you've got your third-party data you can use. So data mining comes in really handy, and this is where you can just go to things like Reddit, look at Twitter, look at testimonials, reviews, case studies, gather all the external data and see what people are saying about your products, your services, and what it is that you do. But again, no product or service exists in silo. So at the same time, you also need to keep an eye on the competition and the market around you. So this is where I will bring in that third piece of data, which is market data. So for this, I will look at competitor analysis, industry trends, and then any kind of research reports and statistics. So competitor analysis, as it says in the tin, I just want to see what their competitors are doing. What are they doing well? What is their messaging? Where are the gaps in their strategy? Who are they targeting? And just really understand where my client or my brand sits against those competitors. And in terms of industry trends, I want to know what is happening right now that could be shifting the way people are engaging with your products. Is there anything going on right now that you could be capitalizing on to get them more motivated and more engaged in what it is you do? And then finally, with research reports, I want to be able to have evidence to back up any claims that I'm making. So I want to look at kind of any studies in the industry, any annual reports that are going out, and just seeing what is being said in the market right now. So once I've done this, I typically have a lot of data. But as I said, I'm a word girl, so it's all very qualitative. It's very wordy data. And then this next stage is where I will just try and crunch it and make sense of the data. For me, crunching data is a lot of thematic analysis. So Notion is a trusty tool in my tool stack. It is very much a second brain for me. So what I do with Notion is I will have this template I typically use. The columns might change slightly. If you want to take a copy, the QR code may work. I've also shared this on LinkedIn, so you can grab a copy of it there. Essentially, I will choose columns that highlight key motivations throughout that customer journey. And then as I'm going through my data I've collected, I can just slot it in wherever I think it fits best. As I'm doing this, I will just tag where that data source is. So I just know if it's an interview, I can quickly go back to the interviews and see what's in there. And I'll also tag the persona because you're going to be speaking to multiple people. So it's just nice to be able to see what particular persona does this relate to. And then you can then kind of drill down into your data and make sure if you're writing a landing page for one particular audience group, you can just go through the data, filter it on the right level and speak to those people. And the whole reason I focus on this qualitative data is that it tells you people's motivations for decision making. It helps you get to that why behind them being there, and it helps you to connect more with that emotional journey. We all know the phrase, I think, therefore I am, but I kind of want us to rephrase that when we think about our messaging. I want us to think about, I feel, therefore I am. I want us to think about how it is that your audience feels when they are interacting with your website, with your products. I want to be able to really, really lean in to that emotional aspect. So the final stage is we then want to turn that data into copy. This bit I could probably spend days on. So I've just given you like the top level where I'm just going to share some of my favorite tactics that I like to use to write copy that's going to connect with people. So the first one is write like your users. Don't use all this supercharged and abbreviation heavy language that's going to disconnect with people. Use the words that they actually use. So when I worked with Women in Tech SEO, which some of you I'm sure will be familiar with, we did surveys and interviews, and we found that a lot of members described the community as welcoming. This was a word that was cropping up time and time again. It's something that they connected with when they joined the community. So it was clear that other people joining the community were also probably looking for a place that's going to be welcoming as well. So very simply, on the Join Us page, we just made sure that word welcoming appeared. It didn't have to be a headline, it didn't have to be a large in-your-face piece of copy, but it just meant that as people were reading through that page and going through that decision-making process, they were seeing words that were hopefully going to resonate with the thoughts they were thinking at the time. And then on a similar note as well, I also look for patterns. So when writing price and page copy for Sitebulb, we noticed a few patterns in the things that people were worried about. So people were worried about the pricing, and they were really, really conscious about making sure that pricing was right when buying this kind of tool. They wanted to make sure they had a tool that could crawl multiple sites at once. And some people also mentioned the fact that the computer didn't blow up when they used it. So by noticing these patterns, I was able to turn this into copy that connected with those people. So in this case, I didn't use the words like for like as to what they said. I just took the feeling and the motivations behind those words to write something that's going to connect with them. And if anyone is familiar with Sitebulb, you'll know that their release notes are very fun, very playful. So we wanted to bring that across in the tone of voice as well. So we went with run large-scale SEO audits without your computer sounding like a jet engine or your accountant crying, phew, finally. So it's pulled in all those patterns that were coming up through that data and through that audience engagement that we did. And then the next bit is just, as I've said many times already, emotion trumps logic when it comes to conversions and when it comes to sales. So appeal to people's emotions and desires. Don't shy away from it. Fit that into your customer journey and think about the different kind of feelings they're going to be having. When writing copy for a e-commerce consultant, on their interviews with their kind of key target customers, we noticed that one of their frustrations was the bottlenecks that they were experiencing. And then the outcome for them was that they had that e-commerce success. So in their web copy, we just wanted to mirror these side by side, put in that before state emotion with that after state for them. And then finally, for that kind of copywriting piece, you want to have fun with your different copywriting frameworks and techniques. So some that you can use, the first one is the rule of three, which is, as it says, it's where you kind of piece three things together. The rule of three has been shown to be memorable, likable, and trustworthy. So whilst it is also fun to use, there is psychology studies behind it that show it does actually work. It does get people to know, like, and trust your brand. The next one is the familiarity effect. So this is more of a mental model. So familiarity effect is great if you're introducing a product or a concept that people aren't aware of. It's new to the market and they're not too sure what it does. So with the familiarity effect, you position your unknown product or service against something that people do know and trust. So in this case, I was writing copy for a new SaaS tool in the bridal market, and the main comparison we could put it against was booking.com, because booking.com is a large tool people use day in, day out. They're familiar with it, and it's also something that's really innovative, so it connected with how we wanted them to perceive our tool as well. Next, we can use the before-after bridge, which is quite a fun one to use. So this is a piece of copy from Kyle's landing page that we did for his services. So if you need a GA4 consultant, Kyle is your man. So the before-after bridge is where you position their before state with their after state after they've engaged you and used your products and services. And then you use your product as the bridge between the two. So for Kyle, again, we kept this lighthearted. It's one-to-one. So we went with go from yawn-worthy, the before state of kind of how using these tools that are boring and frustrating, to yay-worthy, to try and capture those feelings of relief and excitement, with custom Looker Studio reports, which is the service that bridges the gap. So to very quickly recap, first, you want to gather all the data. Just capture everything that you can, especially that data of people, that voice of customer, and the psychological data that's going on. Then, organize it with more psychology, motivations, and decision-making. And then finally, write high-converting copy. Obviously, there is more to it than that. That is just the tip of the iceberg, but we only have 20 minutes. So before you go, I want to leave you with a question and a closing remark. So I just want you to think about, when was the last time you spoke to your customers and your audience? Like, when did you actually speak to them and find out what it is they think about your products, or what it is they were going through that led them to you? And finally, if you do want to create copy that converts, then you've just got to lean into the psychology of people. So thank you all. I'm Tasmin, founder of Vehicle Digital.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.